the New York City FC pregame live. Today, New York City FC hosts Real Salt Lake in search of their first win since March 12th. And now, here are your hosts, Glenn Crooks and Matty Lawrence.
And there we are, man. That's Matty Lawrence. I'm Glenn Crooks, and welcome. We're live from Yankee Stadium, where Mark Frotto is shouting over the PA. He's got that wonderful big voice, but there's nobody here yet. Well, just a few. So I guess, hey, if there's just a couple of hundred, you still give me announcements. You know, you treat them as if there's 50,000 in the building. Not sure how many will show today, but it's an important match for New York City FC as they play host to Real Salt Lake. New York City in MLS play. They've been eliminated from the CONCACAF Champions League, so now the pure focus is MLS. But the record 1-3-1, and their 0.8 points per game is last, 14th in the Eastern Conference. They sit in 14th place coming into this game. Meanwhile, RSL, despite a lot of injuries, they've overcome some things. 3 wins, 1 loss, 3 draws. They're 1.71 points per game and sitting in 6th in the Western Conference. So early in the season, we've gone over these things before, Matty, you know, must-wins, important wins, and I know you're not in that must-win category, unless mathematically it's a must-win. But nonetheless, this is a fairly important affair, I think.
It becomes important for team morale. I don't think it's particularly relevant for the standings, but I think it's certainly relevant for the players themselves. They've just suffered a devastating loss against Seattle over the 2 legs, obviously. That affects you mentally, that's for certain. Physically, they're still pretty tired from all the travelling that's set in from the beginning of pre-season all the way through to this point now. And I know it's an old cliche, but now you have to remain focused on the league. There's nothing else to concentrate on. Yes, US Open Cup will come soon, but really it's just league play. And after winning MLS Cup last season, they'll want to get there or thereabouts in terms of playoffs there. But it's not imperative that they win today in terms of standings, in terms of points. But I do think that for the head coach, Ronnie Dyler, and for the players themselves, I think they need to see that the net bulging, so to speak, and I think they need to see 3 points on the board as well, because 1 win from the opening 5 games is not good enough, whoever you are.
Red Bull Arena was the site of the last match played by New York City FC in the second leg of the CCL against Seattle. And by the way, Chris Sakonis is with us to provide opposition analysis. We'll get a close-up look at the RSL in just a few minutes. But it was a game where New York City, they put themselves in a hole, essentially, by dropping the 3-1 result on the road at Lumen Field. Played well. It was an onslaught at the end. It ended up 1-1, but New York City, Stefan Frei, goalkeeper for Seattle, probably the man of the match. He made 3 huge saves, including a breakaway save on Tylis Magno. New York City hit the post twice in the same sequence, so they just couldn't get over the hump.
Yeah, it's very difficult when you put yourself in that hole, especially against a team as experienced as Seattle. It's not just the quality they've got, it's the experience they've got in big games, whether that be domestically, whether that be in the CCL as well. I think it made it I know it made it very, very difficult with that 2-goal deficit. Yes, NYCFC are difficult to overcome that deficit. Yes, they've got the players to open up the scoring, to score 3-4 goals in a game. I just think it's going to be very difficult against a side of the quality of Seattle. And I think we saw over the 2 legs that Seattle are going to be hard to beat in the CCL final, and also they're going to be very dominant in domestic football as well in MLS.
Yeah, especially in the Western Conference. And New York City had to make up a 2-goal deficit with a team that is not scoring at any sort of frequency. Yeah. 4 goals in 1 game against Montreal here at Yankee Stadium, the home opener, a 4-1 win. But that's the only victory of the season. And New York City right now, I want to make sure I have this right, have a joint MLS low 5 goals despite getting 14.8 shots per game. So they're creating some sort of opportunities, not necessarily big chances, yes. But there's things going on, but nothing in the back of the net to speak of.
Well, exactly. You said it. 4 goals against Montreal, just 1 goal in the other 4 games in the league. That's not good enough from anyone's point of view. 1 goal in 360 minutes of football, that's not going to win you games. It's impossible if you're averaging 0.25 goals per game to win games of football. That is why they've lost three games. in the league, that is. And of course, I look at Valentin Castellanos and I just think he's trying over hard at times. That's not overly a criticism. I just think he's choosing some shots that he wouldn't have taken last season. I think a lot of the players are as well. I think there's a nervous energy throughout the team that's saying they know they want to score goals, but you have to choose the right moments, the right openings. And I think at times there's a reason they've got so many shots without hitting the target, without scoring goals. It's because it's the wrong option at the time. They need to be a little more patient in front of goal, I think.
The 23-year-old Castellanos has played in all 5 matches, no goals, no assists. Same for the playmaker, Maxi Morales. However, even though he's played in all the MLS regular matches, unable to play either leg of the Seattle game, CCL semifinal. Maxi's got a rib injury. It occurred the night before the first leg out in Seattle. They had a 7 p.m. session. It was a collision with one of his players, accidental, but he's down. And the other key contributor to this team, Thiago Martins, has been put into the starting group maybe a little ahead of schedule because of the absence of Maxime Chenot, who was injured for Luxembourg on international duty. It's a head injury, more specifically an eye injury where his vision was impaired at first. It is progressing, but from what we can gather, it's still going to be at least a week or two for either one of these two players to get back into the 11 and be fully fit to play football.
Yeah, and I think anybody who's listened to us before, Glenn, knows that I like Chenot and Carlins. Together they are probably the premier centre-half pairing in MLS, if not the best, certainly second, third. They're right up there. And it's not just because of their individual talent, it's their talent together. It's that one solid unit of the two centre-halves, the cohesion, the gelling, the fact that they know each other so well. And I think you see the minute you take one of them out, it becomes very difficult for somebody to replace whoever it is, whether it's Chenot, whether it's Carlins. And Thiago Martins has had a tough time. And everybody said it. Ronnie Dyler said it. I'm sure Thiago Martins knows it himself. It's hard to move club, even when you're in the same country. I did it back in England, to move one club to another, even when you're speaking the same language. It's the same league. It's still very difficult to ingratiate yourself with your new teammates, understanding the style of play, let alone coming from a completely different country, completely different culture. And he shouldn't be in the side just yet. Not because he's not good enough, but he needs a little bit of time to bed in all around the game, not just the 90 minutes of football. I mean, where he's living, he's eating differently, different training methods, different nutrition, fitness, etc., etc. And I think we're seeing...
Those things are factors. And,
they're definitely factors.
And Ronnie Dyla has covered for him, so to speak, because he talked about his entire journey just to get here.
Yeah.
He's living in the hotel. His family's not here, so he hasn't found an apartment yet. He probably hasn't had time to look for an apartment. They've been on the road so often. And then thrust into the lineup in these big situations. And like you said, Ronnie Dyla also said, yeah, he's had some moments, an own goal, the foul on Rui Diaz, which led to the penalty in the first leg at Seattle. By the way, Seattle lost to Inter Miami last night, 1-0 in Seattle. So they're feeling it a bit too. It's just playing both competitions, and maybe Miami starts to get a little credit. We have been proponents of what are they trying to do whenever we watch them, but they've come on recently, and Jason Kreis, former New York City coach, is an assistant there. So I figured the other we can multitask up here. This is Crystal Palace. Our brother Patrick Vieira is trying to get to the FA Cup final against Liverpool. How cool would that be? But it's still 0-0, 36 minutes into the match against Chelsea.
Yeah, and it's tough for Crystal Palace because they're missing their best player. The best player is Conor Gallagher, obviously, and his parent club is Chelsea, so the pre-agreement was to go on loan for a year every time they play Chelsea, whether it's the FA Cup semi-final, whether it's in the league. Conor Gallagher isn't allowed to play. And that's a rule. Well, it's not a rule, but it's certainly something that everybody in England really abides by. Because you just know that inevitably Conor Gallagher would score if he was playing for Crystal Palace. It's you'd be silly.
I thought in tournament play, I didn't know that. I honestly didn't know in tournament play that it would still be in effect. So,
yeah, it's in effect all across the board. Yeah,
it makes sense.
It does.
It does make sense. And Crystal Palace, one of Matty's former teams, so I know. And with one of your former teammates who's on the staff, right?
Yeah, he is Sean Derry, who played centre midfield when I was playing centre half. Yeah, I think he'll be classed as first team coach. So he's on the bench there alongside Patrick, alongside Christian. So it's good to see Christian Wilson, who was here as well at NYCFC. So it's good to see one of my friends flourishing, and also Patrick flourishing as well in the Premier League.
This is New York City FC pregame live. It's New York City playing host to Real Salt Lake at Yankee Stadium in the Bronx. This is the kind of weather you like as a player, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's like low 50s, a little bit of a chill. Wind is not whipping too heavily. The sun was out bright earlier. Now it's more overcast, which the players probably like better too, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think
the sun in your eyes.
I think the players will absolutely love this here. We can see the pitch just down below us is being heavily watered as well. Yes, there's the infield area that's starting to play a factor.
The Yankees started up in April
playing.
7th. They're back playing again.
Exactly. So we can see already the pitch doesn't look anywhere near as it did at the beginning of this season or at the end of last season, and that's just an inevitability of the crossover between the baseball stadium and the soccer stadium. That's the way it is, and I think most of the players, and I think most opposition teams now are used to it as well. There's not the criticism being
you don't hear it as
you
much.
Don't hear it as
you
much.
Hear the chuckling a little bit. There's a little chuckling, and that's pretty much it. With New York City playing matches at Yankee Stadium and Citi Field this year, and also at Red Bull Arena. So it's a triumvirate of home pitches for New York City FC in any one year, due to the fact that the primary tenants here are the Yankees of Major League Baseball. So that's what causes some of this juggling. RSL and New York City FC, they've only played 5 times, in part due to COVID.
Yeah.
So neither of the last 2 seasons have these two sides met. RSL leads the series 4-1. The only victory for New York City FC was in the 2018 season. That's the last time these two met at the Yankee Stadium. And New York City won the game 4-1 to Juri Schradi, Ewinga Burgett, and Ebenezer Ofori. Remember Eben Ofori? Remember that shot? He hit it from about 35 straight away. I think it was his only career goal for New York City. And then Maxi Morales. Only one of the 4 goals was presented by someone on the current squad, although Maxi not available today with a rib injury. You see the picture of Chris Sakonis. Well, Chris Sakonis is here with us. And, I moved. How did I remove him? Well, there he is again. See, I do this to Chris sometimes, and he's with us each game during our pregame to talk about the opponent. All right, what do you got about RSL, Chris? What's up?
Hey, what's going on, guys? Just a couple things I want to get into about RSL. First, this is a team that the early part of their season has just been a tale of streaks. On the one hand, they started off the year with a 3-game win streak in early March. They've struggled in their last 3, just 1 draw, 1 loss, 2 draws. Their last game was a 2-2 draw to Toronto FC. Formation-wise, they've gone with a 4-3-3 for the last 2 games, really prioritizing, getting players out in the wings as well. The New York City FC backline is going to have to contend with crosses coming into the area, danger from having both the wingers and the midfielders coming forward. One guy to look out for in that area, Michael Chang, I should say, excuse me. Particularly dangerous here. 2 assists in the last 6 games played. He's one of RSL's best crossers, and just someone that you're going to have to keep an eye on.
All right, Chris, as we present this live from Yankee Stadium, and we're talking about RSL, they are a team that lost Albert Rusnak to Seattle. We've seen him play now a couple of times against New York City FC, and it was a free transfer. When I look at something like that, I just think RSL blew it somehow. And the story is that Rusnak went into Pablo Mastroeni, their coach, and suggested that he preferred playing in the middle but wide, which is where he was during the course of the season. And coaches don't often like to be told where to play the players. So I think that was kind of the beginning of the end. But the club was very silent about where his stand was and what was happening. And
Yeah,
then he gets a, free transfer, free agent.
It takes a brave man to go in and tell a coach exactly what should be going on. As in, this is where I want to play, this is how I want to play. Look, there's very few people in the world who can do that. Maybe Messi at Argentina kind of selects the starting lineup for Argentina and where he wants to play. But him alone can get away with that. And Rusnak, look, he's a top quality player there. But Mastroeni, he had to do it. There's no way he can be dictated to by a player. So their paths had to separate. But yeah, he's a wonderful player, certainly in terms of MLS play. He's got to be up there with one of the best players in the league. I like Rusnak and Damir Krylak as well, obviously, two of the very best players, and both of them were here last season at RSL, not this.
And Krylak is back and seemingly healthy, Chris.
Yeah, he is, and he's going to be a key guy for them as well. I want to get into the analytics of it a little bit. Krylak, as you mentioned, also starting last week for the first time since February 27th, so he's obviously going to have a big role. RSL as a whole, not the best possession team. They only average about 43% on possession. They tend to prioritize getting the ball forward over keeping possession and holding up the play that way. 40% of their passes are in a forward direction. So New York City FC is going to have a bit of I don't know if I would say onslaught, but they're going to have a lot of balls moving up the field, and they're going to have to contend with that defensively. Real Salt Lake also not very potent in the long ball game, only 39% accurate in that department. They're successful mainly in the build-up through the short passes, getting themselves up both through the middle and also on the wings. And one other thing I want to touch on, too, the defense. Not particularly dominant, winning 50-50 balls this year so far, only 48% on duels, 48.3% on aerial duels. So not the most dominant defensive team in that respect. So New York City FC is going to try and see if they can push the envelope there and control those balls that way.
Yeah, Chris, it is interesting, I think, from the standpoint of the guys that's team Pablo Mastroeni before. I don't know if he gets enough credit for understanding the tactics of the game. I think that we recall back in Colorado, I forget what year in 2016, where they won the West, and they bunkered down, they got very few goals, they scored our late goals, and still managed to come away with it. Like every coach I've ever studied, how to get the credit for that's 6 years later now.
Yeah, it is. And look, Mastroeni did in that season, he did very similar to Nashville, I think, under Gary Smith last season. And look, sometimes you have to play a certain way depending on which players you've got as well. If you haven't got that ability to bring in the big name superstars, you lose somebody like Alvin. You have to change your style and methodology. And certainly, I think any good coach can grow with the team they've got as well. All well and good saying, this is how I want to play, this is my philosophy. As a coach, if you don't have that ability to have a squad the size of Man City or Liverpool, you look at short times and go, exactly, you have to choose a different way to upset the opposition. You can't play Man City at their own game because you're going to lose. You just don't have the players that way to coach on the younger stage. Not only how he wants to play, but also the type of players he's got and how that means he has to play as well.
They have new ownership here, Chris, David Blitzer, and the guy that they tried to bring in sort of replacement this time. They're not like this guy, Sergio Cordova. He's over from Augsburg, and Blitzer is also the owner of Augsburg. So there's an automatic relationship there, yes?
Glenn, I think I'm having an issue. I can't hear you through the stream right now.
All right. Chris, well done. And live stream once again strikes. But I appreciate your presentation, and everyone should know that during the course of the game, Chris will do highlights of our English radio commentary on my Twitter at Crooks. There'll also be halftime show on the New York City Radio Network, and also the Blue Streamers. Chris, thank you so much for the 30th real soon. now, and the value of my man Chris is that we were muted for those 30 seconds. So talking about technical issues, but let's get back to the game here. So a match in 2018, you can't care about that. I think there's only 3 RSL players from the first team that are here from that match. So, but one of the things that has turned a bit. We talked about injuries too at the beginning. David Ochoa, he had made a fairly massive name for himself in goal for RSL last year, 21 years old, but he popped his quad at the end of preseason at the Portland tournament. And so Zach McMath, who is somewhat of a journeyman, I think that's fair. Yeah, I don't think that's being derogatory to him. It's a fact. He's been around MLS. He's certainly not been a starter everywhere he's been. And goalkeepers have to get used to at times being the second or third choice, not starting games of football, on a Saturday or a Sunday at the weekend. It's tough to be a goalkeeper, but psychologically they certainly have to get used to it. And you're right, Ochoa made a massive name for himself, I think partly due to other things apart from his ability. I think he was a wonderful self-publicist for himself, and the way he acted on and off the field and things like that. What was the game? The Minnesota game where more than he got into it with the crowd? Yeah. Kicked the ball into the stands. And, hey, there's the starting lineup for New York City FC. Looks like only one change. Keaton Parks instead of Nico Acevedo in the midfield along with Alfredo Morales. So I had potentially anticipated Gabriel Pereira getting the nod ahead of Thiago, but Pereira is on the bench. And as is Acevedo, as is Kevin O'Toole, the kid out of Princeton, the draft choice. He gets a shot on the bench today. And New York City, again, trying to recover from what is a difficult stretch now. Yeah. 5 matches without a win. They got the draw against Seattle, but that's 5 matches without a win, all competitions. And like you said, 4 of their 5 goals in MLS play came in one match. So there are things to solve, Matty. Yeah, there are. First, it's winning games, and it doesn't matter how it happens, even if you get a scrappy goal at the end and you win 1-0. But for me, it's at both ends of the field. That's where you have to be at your best defensively, obviously, and in attack. And they haven't been. They've been conceding too many goals of NYCFC, and they basically cannot score. 1 goal in 360 minutes is not good enough in league play. It's impossible to win games of football averaging that quarter a goal a game. So, yes, it's something they need to rectify, and Maxi Morales, as we know, will be a big loss as well. Look at this. NYCFC fans from Dublin, Tony O'Connell. He's got the O and everything in the name. And great that you're watching and that you're going to be able to watch the game on TV. And also always know, Tony, that you can listen to the game on the New York City FC Network. Our airtime today is 12:45 Eastern Time. And we're happy to be at Yankee Stadium. And then here's another, on paper, looks like NYCFC might get the win. Fingers crossed. Do you agree with that from Lloyd Kaplan? Look, NYCFC are perfectly good enough to win the game, but they have been all their other league games this season, and they haven't. So, yeah, hopefully it's things coming together today. It's how they react to the loss in the Champions League as well, which isn't about ability. It's about the mentality of the squad of players. And I think we saw last season that it's a pretty strong mentality that oozes through this squad. Exactly. So hopefully we see it again today, because it'll be great for them to win the game. They do need a victory. Aaron Herrera is going to make his first start of the year, again coming back from an injury situation at left back, the 24-year-old, first start all season. A guy now who becomes the second homegrown with 100 appearances for RSL. Justin Glad leads that parade. And there you see the starting 11. Bobby Wood up top. So Bobby Wood at one point was perhaps the Josie Altidore complement or replacement up top for the U.S. men's national team, but it never materialized. No, it hasn't. I couldn't believe it when we were looking down the notes that he's only 29 years of age either. He's still got plenty of time on his side. Maybe not to get back into the U.S. men's national team, because I think Greg Berhalter is focusing on younger players, and probably rightly so, looking ahead to the World Cup this November, December. But I think more importantly, looking forward to 2026 when the World Cup's going to be here in the US, obviously Canada and Mexico. So yes, Bobby Wood is a talented player, but I don't think he's somebody who has come on quite as well as we thought when he was 22, 23 years of age. Yes, he's had a decent career,
But at 29 years of age, to have fallen out of Europe to have ended up back in MLS is certainly not what he would have wanted, I assume.
No, and then back one more time before we break with the New York City lineup. On the bench, Nico Acevedo, Eber, Luis Barraza will be the backup keeper, Chris Gloucester, Andres Jason, Vuk Latinovic, Kevin O'Toole, Gabriel Pereira, and Gideon Zalalem. Those are the reserves for this afternoon's game here in the Bronx for New York City FC. Both teams have appeared onto the pitch for their warm-up, so we're going to move away and get ourselves prepared for our English radio digital broadcast of this one from start to finish, including a little pregame and some comments from Ronnie Dyla. So for Chris Sakonis, Matty Lawrence, I'm Glenn Crooks. Our New York City FC network broadcast begins at 12:45 Eastern. Again, on the New York City FC network, which is nycfc.com/radio. Thanks for joining us as always. And if you're not here and you're listening, great. If you're watching on the Yes Network, great. Just enjoy the game, everybody. Have a good day.